Welcome to the F50 Woman Podcast, dedicated to sharing stories from a diverse community of women in order to provoke you into a passionate pursuit of life, build unshakable character, and achieve extraordinary things. Now, here is your host, Julia Jack.
Do people in your life keep telling you what you can't or won't ever do? Well, this woman at a very early age wanted to change the world, but people kept telling her what she couldn't do. Despite those naysayers, she continued to rise and achieve whatever she set out to do because her father had already infused her with an unshakable and undeniable belief that she could do anything. Come and listen to how one woman never doubted herself and how she's helping others to thrive by being intentional with the words they choose. This is another powerful story filled with real life lessons from Terre Short, another incredible and intentional F50 woman. Hey, F50 women. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I am here with Terre Short. She is a leader. She's been leading for years and years. She is an award-winning author, and she's got some amazing things in store coming up and that we're going to hear about, but I'm not going to jump ahead of myself. I'm just going to say thank you so much, Terre, for joining us.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
Tell us about who you were as a younger woman. What were you like? What did you want to do? What did you want to be? Tell us a little bit about that.
All right. Well, I wanted to change the world, and I'm still working on that.
Yes.
So, yes, I was very much supported by my father and came to believe that I could do anything. And so at a very young age, actually, I was working for him at his company. And I was the only woman in the field ordering steel and wing nuts and crazy things like that, and really trying not to be the wing nut or any kind of nut for that matter.
Yes.
So I really had to find my way in a world of electrical and mechanical engineering. And I did procurement. I ordered things. So I'd get on the phone and these people would be so shocked. They'd say, well, where's the manager? Who should we talk to? And I'd think, that's me.
That's me.
That's me. Yeah. And I really felt, Julia, like I fought that my whole life. I was in my early 20s. I managed a restaurant in San Francisco on Pier 39. And people would say, we'd like to speak to the manager. And I'd show up and they'd say, no, we asked for the manager. And they thought I was the hostess. Yeah. So just, I felt like that was in my face all the time. And, but your question, what I wanted to be or where I started was, I was the cotton candy girl at the local country club pool area. It was the lowest job, cotton candy girl. I had a window, spun my cotton candy, hand it to you. The very next year, I was the leader. I was the manager of that same facility. Yeah.
So I wonder what it is about you that makes that just happen. Have you ever thought about that? How do I keep jumping and taking charge of things?
That's an excellent question. It's a belief. Like I mentioned my father early on, I just had this innate belief. And I would I'd say to myself over and over again, of course you can. People would say, well, you don't know anything about running the snack bar. And I'd play in the back of my head, of course I can. I can do that. You can't do that. Whenever anybody says you can't do that to me, I think to myself, of course I can.
That's beautiful.
So that's what it was, is I kept, and every time I've changed jobs or I've done something different, even writing the book, my own mother said to me, you don't know anything about writing the book. You might be able to write it, but you won't get it published. And I said, of course I can.
Really? Yeah. Watch out. Yeah. How long was that when you said you worked with your father? What ages was that?
18, 19.
That's young. You see?
I was very young. Yeah.
And you said he was the one that told you can pretty much do anything.
He did. Yeah. And
Yeah.
he had my back when, I'd speak to these big distributors of, steel distributors, let's say. And I did a lot of research. I wanted to excel at it. So I did my research and I'd go out in the shop and I'd understand what I was ordering. And when they doubled back to him to fuss about, having to deal with me, or was I really the person that was going to order these, thousands and thousands of dollars of steel or whatever it was. And he would say, absolutely. Of course she can.
That's
Right?
great. So you never second guess yourself. For people who are not that way, it might be hard to grasp. How do you do that? When, what do you mean? I just tell myself, of course you can. Well, of course you can, Julia.
Fair
How
enough.
do you
Fair
fight the
enough.
doubts? How do you fight the fears? I mean, steel.
Yeah.
What if I order a piece that's too short? I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. The beauty then was that I was on the telephone. It was all done by telephone. Had I had to go to a meeting, and that actually came up once, the person said, we didn't have email or anything. It was a long time ago.
Right.
But someone left a message once and said, can we meet for lunch? And I thought, oh, no, we can't meet for lunch. Then they'll know. But they knew by my voice I was a woman, but they didn't know I was 18.
Right.
18, 19. I did it 18, 19, and 20. So I was on the phone, and it's almost like that when you're picking up the phone when you're younger to, ask somebody to go on a date. And yes, of course, as a woman, I did do that, even though that was like odd, right? But you have that nervousness, you're just sort of shaking a little bit. Well, at the very beginning, I was always like that before I picked up the phone. But again, I would steel myself, so to speak, with the knowledge that I have. And I'd go and talk to the people in the shop and learn about the product. And then I'd have all my notes and I'd get on the phone, and with great confidence, before I got on, I'd center myself. And I don't see it that's a very interesting thing. I did not see it that way then. I did not meditate. I didn't have what I call centering thoughts. I didn't have a mantra that I told myself to support myself, other than, yes, I can. Of course I can. But I just would pause long enough to summons that energy and that confidence, and then I would do it. And I know for sure that each time I did that, it built upon itself. Like the confidence I have today built upon each hurdle, each time, and each success builds upon the next one. And the next thing you know, you have tons of confidence.
Yes. Then you're like, go ahead, tell me I can't do it. I dare you. Right. Well, that's perfect. So let's just jump over the meaty middle, I call it, and tell us about you now. Tell us about what you do, who you are, what kind of work you do, and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I'll connect a few dots. I had quite the career with Four Seasons Hotels as a leader with Four Seasons Hotels. So I was all in hospitality. Started my own business when I was starting my family. I thought, people said, you can't have a family. And I actually had a general manager with Four Seasons say, you cannot have it all. You cannot have a family and a career. And of course I thought, yes, I can. Right. So when I started, with the idea that we were going to build a family, I thought, well, I better get on this and have my own business and be my own CEO so that I could have more control over my time. So I did have my business for 15 years, specifically coaching and consulting, leadership development, but mostly in hospitality. Okay. And the next thing you know, I was invited to the local hospital. I lived in Montana, and they said, we would like you to be on the team. And other people said, you don't know anything about healthcare. You can't do that.
Gracious, you got a lot of that. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I said, yes, I can.
Of course I can.
Right. And I wanted to learn. I did take probably the world's largest pay cut that year. But anyway, I transitioned from from hospitality to healthcare. And part of what was driving me was I'm obsessed with how people communicate. And I was in hospitality thinking, this is not what you say to a client, and this is not how you lead your people. And so I got becoming obsessed with the words people chose. Yeah. And then I thought, wait a minute, it's actually more important, instead of taking care of the needs of the rich and famous, as I was doing and training people to do, I would love to use my skill set to help the vulnerable. So that's where when I had that opportunity in healthcare, pay cut aside, I thought I can help leaders be better at what they do, and then ultimately interact with patients on a much higher, better level, and became passionate about that. So 10 years in that. And then in 2019, back to my own business, coaching, consulting, and I wrote a book. I had it always in my head since I was,
which I'm hearing. Yep.
Yeah, probably in college, I always thought someday I'll write a book. That's that manifestation. Like had, I wasn't as good at it as I am now. It was more happenstance, but I was contemplating things that I intended to manifest. Now I'm much more specific about it.
Okay. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. You refined that as you went through life and
Yeah.
the different opportunities. Is there anything in between those 2 points that changed things? What is the one thing that changed everything for you?
That's so interesting. I think about that a lot, and people ask me that a lot. What was
Really?
this one big thing? There wasn't a big thing. It was a series of things. It was a series of successes that kept leading me, forging forward and saying, yes, I can, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this.
Okay.
And really never looking back. So to that end, though, as I was doing it, I started to contemplate more about who I was competing with. So I've always been very competitive. At university, I played lacrosse and hockey. And
Okay.
actually, when I was 53, I started playing hockey again.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. So I
All
played for a
right.
couple of years. Yeah. But anyway, I've always been very competitive. And early on, this is the one thing I can tell you switched for me is early on, I was competing in a male dominated world. I was competing with the men. I felt it all the time. I just felt that I had to say things and I had to represent myself and this and that.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden I thought, no. Wait a minute. I'm okay. I'm not okay. I'm fabulous as I am. And so if I'm the only skirt at the table, I don't have to speak up in a way that proves I know and that I'm eligible to be there.
Right.
I'm going to more show them by my actions, and I'm going to ask them questions, and I'm going to then have them rely on me and my unique female specific qualities and my communication skills and maybe what they might consider soft skills. And I excel at those. So now I'm not going to compete with anybody. I'm going to compete with myself in order to show up as who I am and to help others in the way that I can. So that's the shift that happened for me from competing with others, with other women and men, and now only competing with myself and challenging myself. Right.
Nice. Do you find that's true with other female leaders that you work with, that is a transition they need to make as well? Just really trying to try to fight the boys and not use your inherent female skills, which are powerful.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think sometimes as women, we spend a lot of time trying to prove we're have some skill better than another woman even. And it's just simply not about that. That's like the single biggest switch in my mind. So it's not something that happened. It's just something that it is something I grew into.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Think about how we compete with each other as women. I always focus on how we compete with men, but we compete with each other too. Yeah.
We do. Yeah.
So did you have a mentor? Did you have a role model? I know you talked about your father, but was there anybody in there that helped you along to nudge you one way or the other, or that you went to help you with some rough spots?
I don't know actually why it occurred this way, but I felt like I was always struggling to find a woman to fill that role. That was always men, right? And I had this one when in my Four Seasons days, I had a boss I'd be in a meeting and we'd come out and he gave me candid, immediate feedback that this is when I was starting to learn. I didn't have to spout off what I knew or what have you. He'd say, you might have been more effective if you'd hold that back and ask, deeper questions or what have you. Nice. So he was helping me to see that, right?
Yeah.
So eventually, though, I do have a mentor. Finally, I find this woman. She's a general manager of this boutique hotel in San Francisco. And I'm like, okay, she's done it. She's gotten there. I'm going to have her. Well, lo and behold, I am wooed by another hotel, which was the Four Seasons. And so I leave, but she agrees to still be my mentor. And so I'm there only a few months, and they want to make me the executive housekeeper. I was 25, Julia. It was the only 5-star, 5-diamond hotel in all of San Francisco. Wow. And I was 25 and they were about to undergo a renovation. So I asked her to meet me for a drink. We sit down I just can remember this like it was yesterday. although 25 was not yesterday.
No.
And yeah. And I sit down with her and I say, well, and she knew all the players because she was a GM in that community, right? She could see the other hotel.
Yeah.
So anyway, I sit down with her and I say, so they've offered me, and the general manager at the Four Seasons was very well known. And he's offered me executive housekeeper. And she puts her drink down and she said, well, then I hope you declined. You can't do that.
Really?
You can't have
she
that
should
job.
know better than to tell you that, right? What?
I just looked at her. I thought, wait a minute, this is my mentor telling me that.
You're supposed to be mentoring me. Yeah.
Right. And I'm thinking if anybody's going to second guess, it should be me. Right.
Yes.
And I went there to get her encouragement. And she said that. And I left there going, oh, yes, I can. Of course I can.
That's right.
And
of course I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so my point is that I've struggled to have female mentors. And so now I'm very aware of that. I'm very aware of offering myself as a mentor to women because, yeah. And the weird thing about that is that as I've had these leadership positions and such, these days I get a lot of calls from men that I mentored along the way, or they worked under me in some capacity, and they'll call and say, I need some Terry time, or what do I do about this difficult situation? And they reach out, and I find that some of these men do that even more. Maybe that's a reflection of how I availed myself to them,
right?
But they're not afraid to ask for help and for guidance and such. And I would suggest that women open up to that as well.
Yes, please. Yeah. You got to keep asking like anything else. Yeah.
That's right. And of course, I'm going to always say, yes, you can.
Yeah.
When the person comes to me. Yeah. And they have, as a coach, I know now I've learned to ask the right probing questions to peel back the layers of what might be holding someone back from saying, yes, they can. Yeah. And what I like to call their personal podcast. So we all have, we're listening to your podcast and but we have this personal podcast plays 24/7.
Yeah.
Right. It's always
really
playing.
Does.
And so those words that we are choosing for that podcast, we're in control of it. We're the host, we're the director, the producer, we decide who comes on. So now I'm very much in tune to helping people understand that, how they control. I say the voice is a choice.
Yes.
That one playing in your head. Yeah.
It is. Mm-hmm. Yes. And we think that it's just, or even if we don't think we can control it, so I don't even think we oftentimes even know it's running. It's just running, going wild.
Right. That's right.
So you're 25. You've got this incredible position, this very powerful position. Your ego never got bigger than your belief, if that makes sense. Did your ego sort of like, I've arrived, I'm the woman. And so it became all about you to the point where you almost got afraid that others might take it away from you.
No, because still that's a good question. But at that point, I was still competing against the men. I was the only skirt in those days. And then I moved from that Four Seasons to the one in DC. And I was the only skirt around that board table.
Okay.
And so that wasn't going to happen for a long time because I was still trying to prove myself, prove my value at the board table. And yeah. So no, it was, I'm not going to say struggle. It wasn't so much a struggle, but again, because I had that confidence, but I had to work at it. I had to work at keeping myself, keeping my narrative going in a positive direction. Even when, there were hurdles with what my next steps were and such. And so that's right when I was starting to turn, and I'm in this by myself, or not by myself, but I'm in this for myself. And it's not a reflection on these other people and the job they get or what they do. And I started feeling more about being competitive with myself as opposed to someone else. And that's when I have the mentor, the male who's giving me feedback. He gave me feedback every day. And that was super helpful. I think that's something too, that if I was going back and doing it differently, I didn't ask for that. He just knew to give it to me. Yeah. Now I would ask for that. Now I would say. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That leads into the other question about if you were to meet your younger self, what would the one thing you would tell her? Is that it?
Oh, Julia, please don't make me only say one thing.
No, you definitely. No, if there's more, I
I've
usually
got
just say
four
one
things.
thing, but
I've
if you
got
have
four
more,
things.
please. Yes.
I got four things.
Yeah.
Show, don't tell. Do
Okay.
much more showing, not telling, because the telling is that for me, the telling was me sort of almost acting out to prove myself. So
Okay.
show, don't tell.
Okay.
Of course you can. Keep
Yes.
that mantra in your head.
Yes.
Compete with yourself as opposed to others.
Okay.
And the last one is meditate. I wasn't meditating at the time, and I had a sense of, I journaled. I had a sense of writing in a journal what I wanted in another year or 5 years or what have you. But I wasn't, it was pretty random. It was
Right.
like, it was really,
Yeah.
really pretty random. There wasn't
Okay.
let's call it, there wasn't a practice as I would
Okay.
say I have now.
Right.
And yeah, no, I wasn't practicing anything. I was just like randomly dreaming things up. But that's
Right.
part of it. And I was manifesting that or putting those thoughts in a journal, and then they came to be. So
Okay.
that's why I say meditate, journal, get your thoughts and your desires out there, because until you get them out in the universe, this is not going to happen. All the
Right. Yes.
confidence in the world can't bring it along until you imagine what it is that you want.
Right. Yeah. If you imagine it, it's sort of that if you don't ask, you can't receive anything.
That's right. Exactly.
So I really want to talk about what's next. I'd like to talk about your book, about the words you choose.
Mhm.
I really want to talk about that book because you shared a few times so far about the words in your head and the podcast in your head. And you kept saying, of course you can. Of course I can.
Yeah.
I want to know about the words we choose and why they're so valuable. So tell us about the book and tell us about what is next.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the book. So I published the book during the pandemic. So that was
Wow. Okay. So it's
fantastic.
recent. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's very recent, actually. We went to New Zealand for 3 weeks. We got there on March 13th of 2020. That was like the
Wow.
day everything closed down, right?
Yes. Oh,
And
no.
we were there for a 3-week trip, and we stayed 54 weeks.
Wow.
So I came back
This
this
is-
past March, right?
Oh, my
The end of March.
goodness.
So I got my book written. I believe this is another thing. You do not need a pandemic to write a book. I followed an outline that that was given to me, and I fix it up even more. That, just a side note, I believe anybody can write a book, and that I also believe everybody has a book in them. So it's just
Okay.
a matter of having the discipline. So anyway, so I wrote the book. And why did I write the book? For years in hospitality and healthcare, as I was saying, I got to be very sensitive to the words people chose when they were speaking to others. And then as I started coaching, I could hear when a client was telling me the words they were choosing for themselves. And I would think, no, that is not helpful. And we choose words that limit and minimize ourselves and others. And it doesn't have to be that way. And we can choose ones that inspire, that support, and that influence. So let me give you some examples.
Yes.
So some of my the more common ones that I hear. So should. So I grew up on the East Coast, and I lived in the world of the shoulds, and I would have that narrative myself saying, I should this and I should that. And I had to bust through that. That's limiting. Should is limiting me to somebody else's perception, something that I'm believing from somebody else, right?
Got it. Okay.
You're on the East Coast. I think
Yes.
you might know about those shoulds.
Yes.
I moved to California, and it's a free-for-all here.
Okay.
There's not such of a sense, at least in my 20s. That's how I felt. I lived in San Francisco in my 20s, and I could feel that anything was possible, and there wasn't anybody ever speaking to me about the should. So that's one example. But there are words that limit too. So the word but, whenever somebody says something or I say something, such and such, so and so forth, and then but, I've just negated what came before. I've just truncated and severed what came before, regardless of what I say after. I've truncated that thought.
Yeah.
Or if you say something and I say, but, you should consider this, I've minimized what you said.
Yeah.
Right?
I absolutely agree with that. Yes. I try not to do the but. It's hard.
Yeah. It is hard. And then sometimes we say however instead. And I had somebody tell me recently that however is but in a tuxedo.
I like that. It really is.
Yeah, that's right. So what do you use instead? You use and. And I challenge the listeners to think about every time they say but, to pause when they're about to say it and think how they could say and. Even for difficult things. I have leaders that I coach that are doing a reduction in force or what have you, and they need to share that information, and they'll want to say, but we have to do this. And I say, wait a minute. Now you can say,
a great set of workers, but yeah,
that's right. Now you can say, and we have an opportunity to, and then go on from that. So that if replacing it with and, it's the glue, whereas but's the scissors that cuts it, and is the glue that pieces together the two different thoughts. And I challenge everyone to do that. You can't, I like to say, their Fast Company wrote an article and they did this whole list of the words from my book, some of the words for leaders. And I like to say, you can't unsee the list. But you also can't change them all at one time. Right?
Yeah.
So one of the ones during the pandemic that I believe has been unhelpful is people started saying if all the time. If we get back to the office, if we're able to travel again, if this. Well, there's no reason for that. If limits, it's like, maybe sort of kind of, hopefully.
But probably not. Yeah.
But probably not. That's right.
Yeah.
But instead, if we say when we return to the office, when we're able to travel again, it's more uplifting, it's more affirmative, and
yes, it is.
Positive. So those are some examples.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I have to see this Fast Company list that listed out. Are all those words listed out in your book?
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. There are different sections. Some of them have their own sections. For instance, the word just.
Yeah.
Particularly for women, it makes me crazy when I hear somebody say, I'm just the dietitian in the hospital setting. And I think to myself, wait a minute, you're responsible for the nutrition of this patient. And until they can eat properly and their body functions properly, they're not leaving. So the role you play is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Right? So so just removing is a big step, and owning who you are or what it is, or even sometimes it's not about the person. I hear people say, I just wanted to take a few minutes of your time, and I just want to show you an update on my report. And not just, I want to show you an update on my report or on my project. And that's important. The minute I say just, I've minimized it.
Yeah. Do you feel like women use the just more than men? I feel like I felt you'd say yes. Yeah.
Another one the women use more is think. They say, I think we'll be able to meet the such and such goal, or I think this will happen. Let's stop thinking about it. Just own it and say, we will be able to make progress toward, or what have you. Sometimes I believe I hear women say it because they don't want to feel too dominating or, what have you. And it's not about that. Own the message and own it. And you can say it in a soft, collaborative way, but there's no reason, and there's no reason to minimize it by choosing the word think.
Yeah. There's a lot of them. That's great.
Yeah.
I am going to try to do that because I know I do some of those as well. And it's disempowering to yourself. Because you do feel sort of like, well, I just wanted to talk to you, but, you might not have time, sort of that apologetic kind of thing. So,
Julia, you just weaved a whole bunch of them together.
Yeah.
I just want to speak to you, but, and then you said you might not.
Yes.
So might's another one. And then by the time we're weaving them all together, that's like, wow.
You might as well forget it. Yeah. Go back to your office. Don't even bother. Yeah.
That's right.
If you are enjoying the F50 Woman podcast, don't forget to share your positive comments and ratings and share us on all your favorite social media channels. F50 Woman is a movement created for women, spread by women. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show and your host, Julia Jack.
So thank you for telling us about your book. Now tell us about what's next. What's coming up? How can we engage?
Absolutely. I am now collaborating with a couple of other women. We have this very diverse, fun team. And one is she's a student of universal shamanism. She
Oh,
calls herself the joyful shaman because she's quite a joyful person who has had uh, an amazing loss in her life and has come out of that beautifully.
okay.
And the other one is a spiritual doula and a sound conduit. And then I'm the CEO business type, right?
Okay.
And so what we've done is we've created the Thriving Leader Collaborative. And we'll be hosting 4 retreats in 2022. The 4th one's in Costa Rica. So that's
What?
exciting. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, so our intent is to help leaders, men and women. The first one is actually female specific, but we'll engage with men as well. I mean, that's how we're going to progress as a species when we get this together. And what we contend is that being a thriving leader and finding the joy in leading others comes at the intersection of what we call woo-woo and win-win. So woo-woo being all things that people think of as to attend to their spirit. So whether or not it's meditation, movement, sound, we actually have 6 key components: self-awareness, community, movement, presence, intuition, and energetic hygiene. And so there are actions under each of those. And so how do you make the best of these components of what we call woo-woo or your spiritual balance in order to inform your professional and even personal sense of win-win, the things that you desire to create a win-win? And we believe that the intersection of those two, so the more you combine those two, the more joy there is, right? Yeah. So that's what we're coaching. And so we've decided that I coach that. I mean, in my business coaching and leadership coaching, but one-on-one, and we want to make a bigger splash. And we also feel that having several days together is the way that people make that whole transformation. So that's what we're doing. And wrapped up in there are your word choices. Yeah. There's a lot wrapped up in there as far as word choices and such.
Okay.
Too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's the win-win part.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, and in the win-win part, we have what I call 6 personas of a thriving leader, and they are being the ambassador of the culture of your organization, being the leader as a coach, so really how you interact with those that report to you, being a continual change agent, or what I call a chaotic expert, the person who can embrace the chaos and provide the order. Being a life integrator, so that's the person who does quite well at life-work balance, as opposed to work-life balance. Yeah. Being emotionally and intuitively intelligent. And last but not least, being a productive and proactive juggler. So that person who can get lots done and juggle things well. And that's born out of the types of things I coach very routinely. So there are different things under each of those 6 personas.
How long would this retreat be, do you think? Would it be a week or?
Yeah, the first 2 are weekends. So the one in March is a weekend and May is a weekend. And then in the summer, we're still looking for the location in the Rocky Mountains for a 5-day. Nice. And then Costa Rica is a 5-day. It's at what's called the Imaloa Institute. So it'll be, I wish I could make them all 5 days, but not everybody has that time, and we want them to be accessible. Be able. Right? Yeah. That's right. Yes. So we're going to do, and then once this year we get through what we're offering this year and fine tune things, we'll offer more. But hopefully we'll offer one a month so that we can really help. And we're creating a community around that. So a community around of thriving leaders.
Yeah. So you can continue, because it may be a continual growth process, because that's a lot to sort of transform if you've been doing leadership one certain way.
That's right. That's right.
How do you feel like leaders are open to the woo-woo?
A good question. They're becoming all the time. So I coach many people in Fortune 500 companies, and they have moments of meditation. They have, it's starting. It is absolutely starting. And I recently, I'm designing a calendar, like sort of a calendar option about how you start your day, and that you get outside, how much time you get outside in the day. And so the things that you build in that, we teasingly say woo-woo because that's such a spectrum. I had a guy last week tell me that he was talking about communication, and he said, well, I think communication is a little woo-woo. And I thought, we have so much work to do.
Yes.
So it's such a spectrum of what people consider woo-woo, right?
Yeah.
And so we want to take the mystery out of it and just sort of open it up to all that's possible that serves one's spirit and one's ability to show up in a joyful place, from a
Yes.
joyful place, right?
Right. Right. Yes. So I'm looking forward to that. You said it's going to be in 2022. I don't know if you want to tell us now or tell us at the end how to connect with it.
Yeah, actually, this is a very timely interview.
Okay.
We just stood up last week the website
Okay.
thrivingleadercollaborative.com, and that's where you learn about just generally about who we are and what we're doing. And then
Okay.
there are links to take you to the retreats. And the first two are in the same place in California. It's a beautiful place called Mount Madonna.
Okay.
It's up on the hill overlooking the Monterey Bay. And so those are the ones in March, ones in May. And then we'll take it from there. So,
Totally in person then. This is
yes,
not a virtual experience.
that's right. And so that's another thing I feel strongly from interacting with others is that the time is right for us to get back together and for us to be in community with others of like mind, and specifically to up our game with what we do from attending to our spirit and what we do attending to leading from a place of joy. And this past 20 months, it's been a little joyless.
It's been a little crazy.
And so let's help each other, and let's help collectively in the world get back to a better place.
Let's emerge from all of that and now transform ours. It's a good
Leave
time
it
to
behind.
transform.
That's right. Leave it behind. Yes, indeed.
So will you give us a little bit of advice from your playbook? What is one book that you would advise all women to read? Of course, your book. Yes, we're going to read that
my
one.
book.
Yes. So the second one. Yeah.
Okay. Now this is going to strike you as odd, I think, because I love this book. I just pass it on to everybody. Anyway, it's Braiding Sweetgrass, and the woman's name, I always want to get it right, is Robin Wall Kimmerer. And here's why. So it's nonfiction, but Robin is she's a mother of two daughters. She's a biologist. She's Native. She's a Native American and indigenous. I'm sorry. And she wraps all that together so beautifully to help us understand, particularly as women, our role in this larger world. And she does that by way of helping us understand how much of the flora and fauna relates to each other and how we are a part of that. And so from her scientific background, but then also her spiritual and the motherhood comes into, and she wraps that all up so nicely that you're just pleased to be on this earth at this time, and particularly in a female body. That's how I see it. So I just think it's a book everyone should read.
And that's a fiction book?
Nonfiction.
No, nonfiction. Nonfiction. Yeah. Okay. Braiding Sweetgrass.
Yes. And it reads like fiction because she's a really good writer. And so she just ticks all the boxes. And
nice. That's a good one. Especially, I think, at least from my perspective, when you're fighting between being a working person, being a mom, taking care of the home, taking care of your parents, where do I fit?
Right.
Yeah. What does woman mean? And I don't know if my mom and our generations before that had that problem, but I feel like we do. Just that feminine energy.
That's right. And it's incumbent upon us now in these conversations and the work that you're doing and bringing these stories to light.
Yeah.
It's incumbent upon us to do that for the younger generation. So I have a daughter about to turn 24, and, every other month I'm talking to her about her position she's found herself in a male dominated industry.
Okay.
So I'm like, I can help with this.
You can help her with that. Yes.
Right. But here's what's fascinating about this. When I was her age, I didn't think there would be such a thing by the time I had a daughter who was in her mid-20s. Right. I thought that it would all dispel and it wouldn't but that is not the case.
No.
So there's still work to do, and I'm so happy you're doing it.
Has she shared any challenges she's had that are different or similar? Are they different or similar to yours, do you think? Is there new stuff I don't know if
No, it's very
they
similar.
couldn't make
It's very
stuff up.
similar. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's just
Yeah.
very similar. And I just think she had this one boss this couple years
Mhm.
ago, and the things he said to her, because in my mind, there some of the sexism and some of the blatant
Yeah.
disregard for a woman's role or what the woman was going to do. I just felt like, oh, it was so 80s. It was just, it's kind of,
Yeah.
it's gone behind us now, or even the 50s.
Yeah.
And not so much when I heard
Wow. When
what
you
he
heard
said
what
to
she,
her.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's a bit of a head slap. I'm just like, how is that possible?
Yeah. Yeah. Can we grow? Can we move beyond it? Yeah. Can
Right.
we?
But I
Yeah.
do feel strongly that
Mhm.
now that more women are finding their voice, and now that there's a deeper connection spiritually,
Yeah.
I feel like the progress will be exponential. We're accelerating. We are currently accelerating
Accelerating. Yeah.
the progress, and
Yeah.
it's so good to be a part of that. And here's an example. She is approaching it way differently than I did. So the way she's communicating, the way she's standing up, and so I think the new generation, they're exactly what I was saying earlier in the end of this interview,
Mhm.
is that it took me a while to compete
Right.
only with myself and to find my voice and not having to show up and, clobber somebody over the head with what I wanted to say. It's
Right.
like, right. So I just feel like this generation they're getting it faster. They're getting
Okay.
it faster. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. And hopefully we can continue to help them to get it,
Right. That's
to
our
make
job.
that momentum.
That's right.
Yes.
Now that's
Yes.
our job. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So what would you say is one thing that you have to do every day?
Meditate.
I knew you were going
Meditate.
to say
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's a combination meditate journal.
Okay.
I, c- I mean, maybe in the year's time, maybe a handful of times have I
Mhm.
meditated and not journaled. Those
Yeah.
always go hand in hand.
Okay.
So, and sometimes, Julia, that's 5 minutes. Sometimes
Okay.
it's 20.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the Deepak Chopra app. So there
Okay.
are all these apps you can get now, and
Yeah.
you can find what you're looking for. And then it's like when you go to a good bookstore and you go and you don't know what you need. You don't know
Yeah.
the book that you're looking for, and the book
Yeah.
finds you. It's the same
Yes.
sort of thing when I go onto that app, because there's such a menu. The meditation that I need finds me. It's like
Nice.
every day I'm just like, how did that happen again?
Okay. Because you
You're
don't
right.
listen to the same one over and over again. You do whatever comes and
That's right.
speaks to you. Nice.
Yeah, and I'm talking about the guided meditations, but there's
Right.
also just music. You can choose a
Okay.
5-minute music or a 10-minute music, and and then um, and not have the guided as well. And so
Okay.
I feel very strongly that, as I've talked to you about how I would manifest things in my life, I
Mhm.
can manifest them even better now because of the meditation,
Awesome.
right? And the
Yeah.
journaling, and the journaling serves the purpose of connecting what I felt and what I heard internally, and putting it out there, like really putting pen to paper, and it connects the dots and sort of solidifies
Mhm.
what transpired. And so that's why I do the journaling as well.
Tell us a little bit about the journaling. You do your meditation and then right after you'll have a notebook next to you and you just write whatever comes to mind, or you were thinking about something beforehand, you meditate and then come out with the answer, or is it all a combination? Yeah.
Oftentimes it's a combination, but oftentimes that's the case. Like I'll finish the meditation and I'll sit there quietly, and this thing will pop into my head that was an answer to something that I was contemplating. And
Oh,
so
okay.
the more you do it, the better you get at it. It's like
Okay.
better you get at receiving the
The more you
signals and the
open.
information.
Yeah.
Right. So, but sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes I meditate and I always start from a place of gratitude, what I'm
Okay.
grateful for. And that just flows into something else. And it
Yeah.
might be a challenge I'm ready to face today.
Yeah.
Something that happened the day since I journaled the day before, that I want to capture and put on paper. But oftentimes it's when you're meditating, at least for me, I'm trying very much to be present and not in the past and not in the future.
Right.
So when I go to write, I try to write presently
Present.
what I'm feeling and thinking, and then
Okay.
and that informs my future for sure, because I'll
Right.
have something that comes out, and then that informs. And And it's not like I go back and read it very often or anything. It's just it's the simple act of putting it on paper, like
Right.
putting it out there and confirming what I am thinking and feeling. And that's the
Nice.
confirmation, the writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you're walking around or you're working with people, does this meditation continue? And how does that help you work better or even work with your clients better? You're talking about how the information flows and the answers come. How does that affect that in any way? Tell us about that a
That's
little
an
bit.
excellent question. So I do what I call practice the pause. So
Okay.
and this is a big part of the information in my book too.
Okay.
So first I'll tell you that one of my favorite quotes, Tom Kenyon says, we are creating the world by how we speak to each other.
Okay.
So I take that to heart. And so now I'm about to say something and I think, and I'm a really fast talker. You've already seen that the time we've been together. So when I say practice the pause, that's a nanosecond
Yeah.
sometimes, right? Before something comes out of my mouth. I'm very much more intentional to think about what's in my heart and what's in my head and how that informs what comes out of my mouth. And again, sometimes has to happen in a nanosecond. But if I'm about to speak to a family member, about to enter a meeting, about to coach one of my clients who's said something, and now I want to very quickly think about those two things, head, heart, and what is my intention? With what I say next, what do I intend?
Right.
And that takes a lot of practice. It takes
I was going to say, that sounds like it needs practice. Yeah.
Right. So, but that's where we get to practice the pause. So practice the pause first. And let's say you're in the discussion, somebody says something, it's a trigger. It pushes your button. It's a trigger.
Yeah.
Now I know to say, I'd like to think on that. What I'm really saying is, in my mind, what the personal podcast is saying, if I answer right now, it's not going to be what I intended.
Yeah.
Right?
Might not be beneficial. Yeah.
That's right. It won't be the right connection between my heart and my mind.
Right.
I know that. So I practice the pause. So but if it's preemptive, like you said, I'm going into a meeting or I'm doing something, it's like a 30-second meditation where I take a deep breath, center myself, practice the pause.
Right.
And then I can do that much, I believe that I do that much easier than I would have if I didn't have this set meditation every day. Like I know how to go to that place of pause easier
you know where it
than
is.
I did. Yeah, than I did before I was meditating more routinely. And so like I said, coach people in a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and they're getting it, and they're having that practice the pause, and you can call it whatever you want. It's a mindfulness moment. It's a moment of meditation. What have you. It's still a centering. It's a way of centering. And that centering then connects heart, head, gets us in the game the way that we want to be in it.
Yeah.
The way we intend to be in it.
So how did all of this transfer into you as a mom, into your daughter? I remember your dad teaching you that you could do anything. Did you purposely teach her that, or was it just, this is just what we do? It's like teaching, if you're a really clean person, your daughter naturally learns it because you're always cleaning, that kind of thing.
Well, that did not happen.
Okay. Yeah.
Opposite of that happened.
Me either.
But yeah.
Either. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish. It's okay. I'm going to have to share another book. So there's a book called Reviving Ophelia.
Okay.
She revised it with her daughter. Any mother of daughters should read this book, but you need to read it when they're like young, because it's about how we choose words that influence them in a positive way. So see, this whole word choice thing has been building for years for me. To your question, so I have a son and a daughter. So my son's 25, my daughter's about to turn 24. And I have been very intentional in my word choices with them. I say this in the book. I'd see somebody on a backhoe and I would start to say, look at that guy in the field on that tractor or whatever. And I would stop myself and say, look at that person. Or we're going to see a new doctor, she such and such. I purposely changed pronouns and such to
make it possible for all.
Make it possible in their minds. Yes. So, and my I've been the main breadwinner in our family. And my husband was the stay-at-home dad. And so
Yeah.
our children saw a whole different version of
Right.
work and that sort of family balance and those dynamics as well. So that has had an effect on my son and how he relates to women and, how he is as well. So yes, very intentional. But that book is the one thing that changed my thinking about how my words would influence them and influence how they look at the world.
Yeah.
Right? Because as a parent, you have influence that can be super heavy. I mean,
Yes.
I felt that heaviness and wanted to get it right. Also knowing, and my children have known this for years, that I didn't come out mothering with the sense that I would get it right. I would do my best. And I've been always very clear with them about it. I think there's not a manual on this. If there was, I'd be reading it. I'd get this straight.
That's right. I'd have the notes. I'd take the class. Yeah.
That's right. I like to research. And so my position has always been, I'm going to do my best and we're going to work this out together. And it's still my position with them.
Yeah. So, and you would say that out loud? You would actually say that to them? Okay. That's good.
Yeah. I always did. Yeah. I think I was a psychology major early on in school. And I came at the mothering as I'm going to be as transparent as possible. I'm going to be transparent and for in a helpful way. If the transparency was unhelpful or harming or what have you, then I would hold that back. But yes, so very transparent and I approached it in a collaborative way. There is no doubt they've made me the mother that I am. So it's a partnership. It's like I feed off of them and they feed off of me, and I'm going to come at it as like I have any other job. I would say, yes, I can. Or of course I can.
Yes.
Be a good mom. But I have never been prepared to say that I will be the best mom ever, because I didn't have an identification of what that was.
Yeah.
That's right. And I will be the best mom for them, but that will be born out of the relationship that we have together.
Yeah. Because all children are different. They have different personalities. They have different ways of relating to the world and soaking up information. So I think that's really great that you were open, because kids are not stupid and they need to know things. They're here to try to understand. And if you're doing things and they don't get it, they're just like, you're stupid. I don't know if they say you're stupid until they become teenagers and don't like you, but I don't know. I'm getting carried away. But the point is that they need that from you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to force me to tell you one crazy story about me being so transparent. They were probably 6 and 7, 5 and 6, something like that. They shared a bedroom. And one night, we homeschooled them. We homeschooled our kids through the 6th grade too. Okay. So the stay-at-home dad thing my husband did was big. It was huge.
Yeah.
Anyway, I said to them, someday you will probably say, I hate you. To me or to your father. And I just want to tell you right now, it's going to break my heart.
Wow.
So I said that. They burst out crying. And that was one of those times I thought, all right, maybe I went a little too far with this transparency.
Yes.
They burst out. They
like,
said,
no, Mommy, we're sorry.
We will never, ever do that. Yeah. And our son did it once. And that was that. Yeah. And he knew it.
When he was older.
He was like twice that age, like 13 or so.
Okay.
But when he did it, he knew it right away. He knew that
it clicked.
Like he had somewhere in his mind that conversation, and he immediately knew that. And so that's my transparency playing out.
It probably wasn't too much. When you think of it, it's almost like I gave you the awareness that when you're older, you're going to have these feelings.
That's right.
And one day you're going to do this, and this is how I'm going to feel about it. And then so when it happened, he's sort of like, oh, she told me.
That's right. That's right. He knew it on some level. Yeah. So I relate that all back to leadership too. Okay. It really isn't any different. Choosing the transparency, choosing words that are supportive, show more than you tell, ask good probing questions. I cover this in the book that, we so often ask kids closed-ended questions. Did you have a good day today? Was it fun at school? Was today a fun day? Yes. No. Fine. fine.
Yeah.
Like, kill
And
you
you
with the
get
fine.
nothing. You get
That's right.
nowhere and you don't understand
Right.
anything more about them. Yeah.
That's right. So what was the funniest thing that happened today? So asking questions that start with what, how, or tell me
Yeah.
is the best approach for children, for those that are your
Yes.
direct reports, for your colleagues. And I work hard at that now with them because that's where the meat is. That's the meat of the conversation. And so working hard to delve into what's important to them by asking those open-ended questions. But it's the same in the workplace.
Yes, it really is. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's all about communication and connection and understanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your stories. And your book is incredible. I think the work is incredible because I have always been a believer that words matter. And I remember, I think it was Maya Angelou who at one point said something like, what if the words that you speak actually had physical power and when you sent them out into the world, they did stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just
They
like,
do.
yeah. So thank you so much for writing that book. And thank you for sharing your retreat. We will look you up online and connect with that retreat because that's going to be great. And I'm thankful for leadership really embracing this because once the companies at the top get better.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I am very grateful to be a part of your podcast and for the work that you're doing, connecting women and their stories. Thank you.
You've been listening to the F50 Woman Podcast. Join the F50 Woman movement and this diverse group of voices to help change the world one woman at a time. Why should you join at your age? Because we're not done yet.